Hey guys, this is Camfrey15 and I'm back with another video for you guys, and I'm back with another fairy tale arc review for you guys. And this time we are going to be talking about the next arc in the intro to the series, and that is the Lucy centralized focused arc, and that is the Phantom Lord arc. And essentially, the Phantom Lord arc is essentially where this guild named Phantom Lord essentially kind of starts beef and starts a war with Fairy Tale because essentially we find out that Lucy is actually, rich, and she comes from a family of wealth, and her father Jude Heartfilia essentially asks Phantom Lord to go retrieve her. But other things happen, and it gets to the point where Fairy Tale is almost taken down. And essentially, it shows the true loyalty Fairy Tale has with their own guild, or with one of their own guildmates, even though she's a runaway and stuff like that. And it really goes to build the development and the character for Lucy, eventually learning to stand on her own 2 feet and standing up to her father. Yeah, so anyways, the Phantom Lord arcs, which I forgot to mention in previous videos, were the chapters and the episodes of this. So if you want to read along, I'm not going to mention the past ones, but I guess I will. So for the intro, so for obviously the first video, which is the intro to Fairy Tale when Natsu meets Lucy, those are chapters 1 through 9 and anime episodes 1 through 4. The Eisenwald arc covers chapters 10 to 23 and episodes 5 to 10, while the Galuna Island arc covers chapters 24 to 46 and anime episodes 11 to 20. Now, for the Phantom Lord arc, the manga chapters, if you're reading the manga for Fairy Tale, the chapters are chapters 47 to 69. No homo there. And for the anime, they cover the Phantom Lord arc, and the anime covers from episodes 21 to 29. So I know I mentioned the last thing that there was like some offshoot filler about the characters coming back to Fairy Tale, and switching bodies and that's their punishment. No, in reality, in the whole, I guess, canonically thing, when they come back from Galuna Island, they see that the guild hall has been attacked, and there's like these clubs, or these iron clubs in the Fairy Tale guild. So they go in there and they go to the underground basement, and that's essentially where they see the guildmates essentially in, like, I guess you can say, the storage basement area. And obviously Urs and the others ask what the hell happened on. And essentially Mary Jane replies by saying, well, Phantom Lord attacked us and they just messed up our guild hall. We just all woke up to this and saw this and stuff like this. Obviously, this pisses Natsu off. He's like, they disrespected our guild. They destroyed our guild hall. Let's get them back for this. My Master Makoto's like, nah, listen, we're fine. Listen, we can rebuild the guild hall and stuff like that. Look, we'll be fine. We'll move on as nothing's happening. We're not going to start a measly war because they just destroyed some, like, our building or something like that. Which we do find out starting a war with another guild is outlawed by the Magic Council and stuff like that. So that's the thing. Now, after Lucy returns home, she's wondering why Phantom did that. And two, we find out that Phantom, essentially, them and Fairy Tale are kind of like on even edges, and they essentially are kind of equal in strength. But, obviously, Lucy's walking home, and when she walks home, I find it funny because damn near everybody, Urza, Natsu, and Gray, are all in this room, and she's like, what the hell are you guys doing in my house? But essentially, Urza kind of makes the point. She's like, well, if they destroyed her guild hall, I guarantee you they probably know about most of the guild mates and where they live. So we all decided we live together. So Lucy's like, okay, I guess that's smart. And so we can keep each other safe. That's when we find out, really the underground workings of Phantom Lord. We know Phantom Lord is also a dark guild here. So this is the second dark guild we went up against. But in this arc, this is like really the main, first guild Fairy Tale goes up against. in this story. I know you can consider the Eisenwald Guild kind of that, but this is like a more complete guild. That was more, the Eisenwald Guild was more just a small group of people and stuff like that. But essentially, they make a mention of how strong they are, and also Urza mentions the fact that just like with Fairy Tale, Phantom Lord has their own dragon slayer named Gajeel Red Fox. Um, and that kind of throws Lucy off the game. She's like, "What? I thought you were the only exclusive one." That's kind of where we get the introduction to the fact that there are more dragon slayers out there than just Natsu. And honest to goodness, with every few arc, we get the revelations that, hey, there's more dragon slayers out there than we all thought previously and stuff like that. But what happens next is now Levy's team, Levy, who is the short blue-haired girl, and her friends, Jet and Troy, they get attacked by a mysterious character who it's later revealed to be Gaggio. That's the one that attacked them. And essentially, in kind of a pretty gruesome way, the next morning, the others overhear something, and they see that not only were Levy, Jet, and Troy all beat up by Gaggio, but they were also kind of, you could say, crucified on this tree with the Phantom Lord guild marks all over their chest, which is kind of effed up, and stuff like that. It was honestly a brutal beatdown, especially, like I said, as I progress, we'll talk more about the Levy-Gaggio relationship as the time progresses. But I still, after all this time, I still find it weird, but I'll speak more about that when we get to that time, and things like that. But yeah, it's really gruesome, really bad. And even too, the one most important thing about, the series of fairy tales, if you're kind of excuse me, engraved with somebody else's guild mark on you, it's kind of like a sign of disrespect, and stuff like that, or like in a way like, oh, we own you and stuff like that. So essentially what happens is this really pisses off Master Makarov, and that's his breaking straw. And Master Makarov, he's like, they can destroy anything, guild-wise, that's fine with me. But if they touch one of my children and hurt them, that's where the last straw hits. So they go essentially declare war on Phantom Lord, and they go crash into Phantom Lord's, whole type of their whole guild hall and everything. Now Lucy stays back to essentially be there with Jet, Troy, and Levy to watch them recover. And the reason why this hurts Lucy the most is when Lucy first met Levy, we know that Lucy has been writing down notes and stuff, and she's kind of been like the narrator a little bit of this fairy tale story. And when she first meets Levy, Levy finds out that, oh, you like to write and stuff like that. So after you write your first piece, let me be the first person to read it. So it starts the Levy-Lucy friendship there, which I do appreciate. I think their friendship is pretty cool and pretty nice, and a really genuine good friendship as we see the series progress over the many various arcs and everything, and stuff like that. I think as for Levy's voice actor, since she is a pretty important character in the series, I'll probably do another arc, probably the Loxus arc, where I'll bring up her voice actor, everything. She was kind of just here, but I'll make sure to bring up her voice actor and stuff like that soon. But essentially what happens, she stays back. So the whole thing is the other fairy tale members goes to raid Phantom Lord's guild, and that they do. They just come on in, and they're just destroying most of the Phantom Lord members and stuff like that. While Master Makarov, he goes up and he's looking for the Phantom Lord guild master, Jose. But sadly, he runs into a freaking trap, thanks to one of the members of the Element 4 named Arya, who uses his magic to essentially absorb all of Master Makarov's magic power, and essentially kind of, I guess you can say, put him on death's door for I guess you can say, many, many times. And let me just say this, guys. If you think this is gonna be the one thing about Master Makarov, I'm gonna say when it refers to him being on death's door many times, expect me to say it probably 4 to 5 more times. Because my God, if you know this series from the ins and outs, you know how there's many times Master Makarov was on death's door and he was about to die. And let me just say this. In the intro to the series, there's another arc where he's almost about to die, and that's after the Tower of Heaven arc. Mind you, Master Makarov is over the age of 80. So he's an old guy. But this isn't the last of me saying, oh, he's at death's door. And we'll get to his controversial what could have been death in the final season. Oh shit, I probably should have kept that to myself. So sorry for spoilers, but technically, like I said, if you shouldn't be clicking on this video anyways if you don't know what the hell it is. But anyways, that happens. Natsu does fight Gajeel a bit. Now some other members before Natsu fights him gets involved, like Elfman and everything, but they utterly get destroyed by Gaggio. But Natsu puts up, I guess you can say, somewhat of a draw with Gajeel in this round, with Gaggio kind of taking, I guess you can say, the W, because eventually gets to the point where Natsu has to retreat. And, Fairy Tail uses the whole thing that, oh, if Master Makarov's down, then we have no will to fight back. But essentially, reluctantly, Urza has to tell the other guildmates, hey, we need to retreat because Master's badly hurt and we have to go back. There's no point in winning because we're just going to put our lives at risk. So they retreat and stuff like that. And she even has a kind of a heart-to-heart emotional conversation with Grace saying, like, it's not worth it. Let's just go back to the Fairy Tail retreat and re-strategize our game plan. Now, on the Lucy side of things, Lucy went to go get some, I guess you can say, some things for Levy, Jet, and Troy. But on the way there, she gets attacked by 2 other members of the Element Four, one named Juvia Loxler and the other guy named Soul. Now, Juvia essentially has water make magic, which essentially she just commands water, while Soul, he kind of deals with earth-based magic and everything. Arya deals with air-based magic, and then obviously I'll talk with the last guy. But because of it, essentially by being captured by Juvia's spell Waterlock, Lucy essentially loses consciousness and she's captured. And then she's taken to Phantom Lord's true headquarters and is confronted by Master Jose. And essentially we get some revelations about Lucy that, well, guess what? We didn't know when the series started. One, we found out she comes from a rich family in the fairy tale world called the Heartfilias. And essentially we find out that Phantom Lord was hired by her father to retrieve her and bring her back home and stuff like that. And to Lucy's dismay, she's like, why would my father want me back home and stuff like that? Obviously Jose is like, I don't care. But Lucy essentially, she kind of, you could say, kicked Master Jose in the balls, and she calls out to Natsu, hoping that Natsu's going to be there. And Natsu, already knowing that something was up, he went to go save Lucy, and he finds her, takes her back to the guild. They talk for a little bit, and Lucy blames herself for everything that's happened and the fact that she ran away. But all the other guildmates are like, listen, this is not your problem. This is not your fault that, your dad wanted you to come back home. We didn't even know that you were rich and everything. And that's also another reason why Lucy feels like you probably don't want me here and things like that. But obviously others like, just because you have your name comes from a very wealthy family doesn't mean we hate you. We still like you as the way you are. You're a part of Fairy Tail for a reason. You embody the traits and the characteristics of what a Fairy Tail wizard's supposed to be. Now on the side, because essentially they're all in trouble, and now that Master Makarov's down, they eventually take Master Makarov to this woman named Porle Yusuka, who's essentially, I guess you can say, Fairy Tail's doctor. Their medical person. She doesn't really like to deal with other humans for some reason. I mean, she just kind of likes to keep to herself. But we find out that she used to be in Fairy Tale herself when her and Makarov were essentially guildmates in Fairy Tale. So that's another pretty interesting. So they have history with one another and stuff like that. But speaking of this, because Fairy Tale's kind of backed in the corner, they need some, I guess you can say, power. So Mary Jane calls upon Loxus to help them. And sadly, Loxus is like, oh, you want me to help you guys? Well, sorry, I'm not helping you guys. But hey, if they're going after this new chick in Fairy Tale, tell her to be my lady, and I'll definitely come and help. And because of this, this kind of pisses off Mary Jane, and she kind of breaks the lacrima that she used to call Loxus. And she's just kind of disappointed at him at the fact that we're in trouble, and instead of you just being like, yeah, sure, I'll come help, you know, you're just going to be kind of stuck up and be like, you know what, no, screw this and everything, which I understand. Now, we get a little bit more background stuff with obviously Mary Jane, but I'll speak of that real soon. Now, because of the whole Lucy thing kicking Jose in the balls, essentially he's like, all right, that's it. We're killing Fairy Tale. And there's ifs, ands, and buts. I was going to spare them, but no, they're dying. They're all dying today. So essentially, his guild can literally transform into a whole ass robotic giant type of thing. So when they enter the city of Magnolia, they activate this one thing called the Jupiter Cannon. And essentially before it fires off, you know, Urza sees this and she re-equips into her adamantium armor, which is her most durable armor that can take probably one of the most dangerous or most, you know, powerful hits. And she takes it. She takes the brunt of the attack and protects the guild because they would have completely been destroyed, as well as maybe also other, you know, people in Magnolia, just civilians essentially. And because of this, because of after getting hit, essentially Urza is now much more weaker and she's powered down now. And essentially Master Joe says, listen, we're gonna fire another Jupiter cannon shot unless you give us Lucy Heartfilia. And essentially, you know, Lucy's willing to give herself up, but that's when all the other guild members start standing up for Lucy and say, you know, we're not gonna do this. We rather die than give up Lucy like that, and stuff like that. And you have everybody. You just have Lucy right here on the side, just very emotional, crying, literally tears. It's a very touching moment, very heartbreaking, sad moment because she's really seeing how much the Fairy Tale cast members really do ultimately care about her. And they say, listen, we don't care if Lucy is a person from a rich, wealthy family. At the end of the day, Lucy's one of us, and if you want to take her from us, then guess what? You're going to have to kill us to do it, and stuff like that. And you know, Lucy's thinking like, this is my fault. This is my fault. You know, if I just hand myself over, this will all be over, and they won't have to get hurt. Instead, Lucy's not understanding that, you know, in Fairy Tale, you know, since the guild treats each other's like family members, they're gonna fight for their own family, you know, even if it's at the risk of them losing their own lives to do it, and stuff like that, which shows you again how much Fairy Tale as a guild is one connected unit. How even if they have issues with one another and they get into fights with one another, at the end of the day, you know, they know that collectively they're a family and they're people that can go to each other and trust each other with things and stuff like that. So because of this, what happens is Mary Jane takes Lucy and she tells Rita, take Lucy somewhere safe and hide her so they can't find her while we take care of this. Natsu goes on to try to take down the Jupiter cannon, while, you know, there's these shadow like ghosts that the Fairy Tale members fight. So yeah, that's what happens. Also, Elfman and Gray, they go into the giant to essentially find a way to take down the Jupiter, essentially to find help Natsu take down the Jupiter cannon. Now, when Natsu arrives at the Jupiter cannon, essentially what he runs into is one of the other people of the Element Four, and that is Totomaru, who essentially controls fire. And when Natsu tries to attack him, he can't really get any attacks or damage off of him because, well, like I said, he controls fire. He makes Natsu essentially pipe himself with his own fire. But eventually it comes to the point where Natsu manages to break the whole fact that his magic can be controlled. And essentially what happens is he manages to beat Totomaru, eventually, is able to stop the Jupiter cannon, defeat the big giant Lacrimet to shut down the Jupiter cannon. But again, that's the last. If you thought that Phantom Lord was done, no, they were not. They have another spell called the Abyss Break spell, which essentially is kind of, I guess, an end of the world type of thing. So essentially what the Fairy Tail members have to do now is defeat members of the Element 4 to be able to stop the Abyss Break spell. So this is when we get split up into different battles. So the Elfman battle has him confronting Soul, and essentially this is kind of the fight where him and Mara Jane kind of somewhat relived their past. And their past is, like I mentioned earlier, I would speak on it in this video, regards to their younger sister, Lizana Strauss. Now, a long time ago, Mara Jane and Elfman had a sister named Lizana Strauss. And she was a pretty kind-worthy, very heartwarming kid. And two, she also had some sort of relationship / when they got older, romantic relationship she had a romantic relationship somewhat with Natsu back in their past. We see in a few episodes how they raised up happy and everything, and how Natsu and Lizana kind of were, I guess you could say, at some case before Lucy, I guess, came along, were star-crossed lovers. It looked like they were probably more than likely, if Lucy never showed up in the guild, and especially with the incident that happened with Lizana, they were probably gonna maybe be the couple that would probably have been hooked up if Lizana was given more of a, I guess, bigger role. But we'll talk about Lizana's role in Fairy Tail when we get to this point, which is kind of one of the more disappointing aspects of Fairy Tail that I don't like. But regardless, essentially, we know that Lizana died after going on a S-class quest with Mara Jane and Elfman. And we see in the flashback that Elfman was the person responsible for killing Lizana, because he tried to do a beast takeover magic, but he did a full body takeover to stop this one beast, but sadly he lost control. And because of it, it only got Lizana herself killed, because since Elfman couldn't control it, Lizana was trying to calm down Elfman, but she gets hit pretty hard and she ends up dying because of it. And Elfman essentially blames himself for killing Lizana. And Soul's using like these Lizana clones and stuff like that, like these Earth-like clones, to get under his skin and really make him lose focus. And this gets to the point where and the mirror side of things, she transforms into look like Lucy when Master Jose sees through this, when Mara Jane is willing to give herself up to, as she's pretending to be Lucy, but Master Jose is like, you're not Lucy Heartfilia. And second of all, too, Lucy wasn't wearing that dress. She was wearing something else, too. But again, goes to show you how strong guild masters are compared to regular guild mates and stuff like that. So what happens is Mara Jane gets picked up by the giant, and she looks like she's going to get squeezed to death. And that's when Elfman sees this, and she sees Mara Jane crying, and he's just like, why are you crying? So that's why so Elfman gets super pissed. He does a full body takeover, turning into the beast. And when it looks like, he doesn't have control, we find out that this time he was able to control his full body takeover. And it makes him and his sister have, you know, a nice heartwarming moment and stuff like that where, you know, Mary Jane tells him like, regardless of what happens, I'm always going to be your big sister. I'm always going to be here for you when you need me. So yeah, you know, we'll get more into this the Strauss family drama there because it is still a pretty emotional family drama of what goes on there. But yeah, now Gray goes up against Juvia Loxer. And Juvia Loxer or Juvia's voice actor in the dub, I'm not saying the sub, in the dub is Brina Palencia. And some of her big roles are Chopper from One Piece, Mineta from My Hero Academia, yes, the pervy guy, which is just shocking. Izuzu Soma from the highly touted, highly regarded, which actually just finished up as of this recording, Fruits Basket. Go check that out. Really good series. And then another big role is Ruiko Sawton from A Certain Scientific Railgun. I like Brina Palencia's role as Juvia here. I love her roles in any anime she does. I think she's a phenomenal voice actor and stuff like that. I think fun fact, I think it was on YouTube. It's an interview how she feels about Juvia. And she blunt out says, I don't know if she feels about Juvia now, but she actually says Juvia is not one of her favorite characters. She actually says she doesn't like the fact that she's all eventually what we later see is all lovesick over Gray and stuff like that, and kind of not respecting his feelings. But I don't know if her opinion on Juvia has changed over the time from when she first voice act Juvia to then. But I think her opinion on Juvia has changed because we see Juvia go through a lot of character development. Yes, even though she has those same traits from the moment she first meets Gray, but by the end you can see that she's a fully developed character and stuff like that. But yeah, just a pretty much fun fact if you wanted to know that. But essentially, Juvia doesn't want to fight Gray because she thinks Gray is, well, cute, and stuff like that. And I like when they first are interacting and she just looks at him for a couple seconds. She just blushes and she's like, yeah, I'm done. I'm not gonna fight you. Goodbye. And Gray's like, what the hell are you doing? And stuff like that. Now, it gets to the point where Gray makes a mention how depressing the rain is, and that affects Juvia's, you know, psyche. So we get a flashback to the past where we see that Juvia, ever since she was a kid, always had rain around her for some sort of reason. And it ruined mostly dates with other people she had other people making the mention of how depressing this rain is and stuff like that. And essentially, she never had somebody to essentially tell her, like, hey, you know, regardless, you're a nice person. I really like you and stuff like that. But because of it, it ends up making her get in a fight with Gray. And essentially, it gets to the point where, you know, it's kind of I guess you can say, just a even battle. But eventually, Juvia kind of loses focus for a bit. She slips off the edge, but Gray saves her when it looks like Juvia could potentially fall down and she's going to be at her death. But then she sees Gray save her, and essentially that's when you can say she kind of really fell for Gray then. And essentially, the thing, Gray kind of talks her down to say, like, hey, it's not worth it to fight anymore. Let's just stop this. And all of a sudden, you know, the rain stops and the sun appears. And she's looking at the sun saying, like, how pretty the sun is. And Gray responds by saying, like, yeah, it pretty is. He's like, and he kind of makes a funny innuendo saying, like, hey, you want to go at it again? But Juvia takes it kind of the wrong way, like, oh, he wants to do it with me more, and stuff like that. And she kind of falls for him, and she's kind of just knocked out. And yeah, so two members of the Element Four are taken down out of the three. So the last one is Arya of the Wind. Now, Natsu gets in a fight with him, but eventually Urza takes control, manages to beat Arya because she finds out that Arya was the one who took down Master Makarov and everything. So eventually what happens next is And the Lucy things is Gaggio actually went to go retrieve Lucy, even though Regis tried his best to fight Gaggio off, and even Loki shows up, but Loki doesn't win because he's kind of halted, and this one thing affects him, which we'll get into talking about in the next arc review. But they lose Lucy. Lucy's taken back to essentially the Phantom Lord headquarters. She's essentially tortured by Gaggio after getting beat up and everything and stuff like that. And they overhear on the loudspeaker of saying, "Oh, we got Lucy." So this obviously pisses Natsu off. And Urza just tells Natsu, "Listen, nobody can defeat you if you unlock your real true power," and stuff like that. So when Natsu shows up, he fights Gaggio. Now, Gaggio's voice actor is David Wald. Now he's in some animes, but not much. But some of his roles are from Don Machi. Is it not wrong to pick up girls from a dungeon? He voice acts Tetsu from My Hero Academia, and this guy named Hannes from Attack on Titan. Now I haven't watched Attack on Titan. The other two animes I have watched. And I like his performance as Gaggio. I think it's pretty cool and pretty dope. I like his voice for Gaggio. It suits him. He's pretty much of a gritty, dark character and stuff like that. And I like his performance. So he really does fit the voice of Gaggio. But this is when you have the battles between two Dragon Slayers. And this battle is crazy. One of the best fights in the series, Natsu versus Gaggio. Definitely one of my favorite fights in the intro, in the start of the intro arcs to Fairy Tail and stuff like that. And they go back at it, back and forth, and stuff like that. Now, it looks like Natsu has a little bit of the upper hand on Gaggio. That is until Gaggio starts eating some iron. And that's when we find out that Gaggio, yes, he's a Dragon Slayer, but he's an Iron Dragon Slayer. So essentially, the properties he has is iron. So he eats iron and makes him strong, and that's what he does. He eats iron, and it gives him essentially the upper hand on Natsu, and he's beating up Natsu pretty badly at the point it looks like he's going to beat him. But then Lucy tries to find some way to help Natsu, so she calls one of her newly spirits she got from the last arc, Sagittarius, and she's like, "Sagittarius, I need you to produce fire." Now, Sagittarius doesn't understand at first, but then that's when Sagittarius is like, "Oh, I know what you mean." So he fires these arrows at this, I guess, gearbox, which creates an explosion. And it makes Natsu eat some fire, get the back on the upper hand with Gaggio, manages to beat down Gaggio, and he manages to win the fight. And before Phantom Lord is taken down, Master Makarov recuperates, he reawakens. He goes to, obviously, the guild hall of Phantom Lord. He's about to confront Master Jose because during this entire Gaggio versus Natsu fight, Urza was fighting Master Jose, but Makarov comes through and they have a fight. And essentially, this is when we get revealed to one of the three greatest spells in Fairy Tail. And this time, Master Makarov unleashes Fairy Law, which is one of the three strongest Fairy Tail spells. The other two get revealed later on in the series, but Fairy Law essentially targets the user. The user, it's the spell, made by the user that targets anybody that the user of the spell deems as its enemy. And because of it, Master Makarov unleashes Fairy Law on Jose, and Jose is defeated, and that's how that's how the battle of Fairy Tail versus Phantom Lord ends and stuff like that. Now, in the cleanup fights, Lucy's appreciative of what Fairy Tail has done for her and stuff like that. Now, Natsu does talk to Gaggio, saying, like, if he had his own dragon, and Gaggio does tell Natsu, like, yes, my dragon was a dragon named Metallicana, and he left, essentially, just at the same time as Igneo left. And he's wondering, and Natsu asks Gaggio, like, if he's wondering, like, do you know the reasoning behind? And Gaggio just says, no, I don't. As much as you know, I wouldn't know myself, and stuff like that. They kind of have a funny thing, but that's kind of the last we see of Gaggio from this point on, until he later makes his return to finish out the intro to the series in the Battle of Fairy Tale arc. Um, so after this whole thing, Lucy again apologizes to the whole guild, but Master Mark like, "Listen, child, this isn't on you. You know what happened happened. And listen, most of the people here in Fairy Tale are runaways, people who really didn't have a family to be there for them. And this is, in your case, you did the same thing. You ran away from home and you didn't have somewhere to you felt welcomed at. And here you felt like we were welcome. You're more than welcome. And listen, this isn't on you and stuff like that. You're a part of Fairy Tale and you embody what it means to be a Fairy Tale wizard, which you get essentially Lucy emotionally crying and stuff like that because she realizes that her guildmates have her back regardless of, her, I guess you can say, I can say from where her origins are and stuff like that. But yeah, so the arc wraps up with Lucy eventually going back to the Heartfilia estate, and Natsu, Urza, and Gray find this out. They go to after her, and essentially this is where Lucy has her coming of age moment, where she confronts her father, and we see her father, Jude Heartfilia. He was a man that kind of disrespected Lucy. Like we see the one flashback where Lucy tried to give him a rice ball, and obviously her father wanted nothing to do with her and kind of yelled at her and kind of said, "Get out of my office and leave me." The sad part is that was on her birthday, and it seemed like Jude Heartfilia never really seemed to give a damn or care about Lucy and stuff like that. So essentially, Lucy meets up with her dad. Essentially, her dad's like, "I don't know why you would run home, but guess what? I'm glad you're back home now. Listen, I arranged you to get married to this one other rich guy so we can continue the family wealth. And I also expect you to give birth to a son so we can continue the Heartfilia family line," which sadly that doesn't happen because technically Hiro Mashima has kind of already made the drawings of what Natsu and Lucy's kid would look like, and we know that Natsu and Lucy's kid is gonna be a girl, and technically that's from, especially if we see the Edalus counterparts, her name's supposed to be Nasha or something like that, which is pretty cute. But regardless, that's when Lucy kind of just stands up to her father, and she essentially is like, "Father, I'm not coming back here, and I'm not gonna get married to that guy." And that's essentially we see her kind of rip her dress up, and she's like, "Listen, the thing is, you can't control me, and you having money isn't gonna buy me happiness, the happiness I want. All I wanted was you to recognize me as your daughter, essentially, and you never did recognize me. And my other family, Fairy Tale, who actually treats me like a family, they recognize me for who I am, and I'm appreciative of that. And I'm a Fairy Tale wizard, regardless of the fact." And seeing this side of Lucy, Jude sees her mother within her because Lucy's mother, Layla Heartfilia, was also a wizard as well, and stuff like that. And it seems like after, I guess you could say, the death of Layla Heartfilia, it seems like her father kind of kept to himself and kind of was like a-hole. But eventually she says, "Listen, if you ever come to try to retrieve me again, let it just be known that Fairy Tale will be coming for your ass next. So don't try to bother me or anything." So this kind of starts the Lucy Jude Heartfilia relationship in terms of this and how Lucy feels about her father. So when she leaves, Urza, Natsu, and Gray meet up with her, and she's like, "Oh, I wasn't leaving to begin with." Also, too, I forgot to mention, the trio of those three find out that Lucy's writing these notes to her mother, and stuff like that. And they're wondering why she never sent them to her mother. Well, we know that her mother's dead, and she's kind of just writing the notes, which essentially is the notes to her novel. And essentially, the arc ends off with them returning back to Fairy Tale, seeing the construction, are working on construction to rebuild the guild, But then the thing is, we find out that they got tickets to go attend this beach area in Akane Beach, and that's where the next arc will take place, which will focus on Urza and her backstory, which ends off the whole main cast of characters having a centralized focus arc. And next video, we'll be talking about the Tower of Heaven arc when it is in reference to Urza's backstory, which the Tower of Heaven arc is my favorite arc of the first few arcs to start off the original series of Fairy Tail. But as for the Phantom Lord arc, I really did like this arc. This is my second favorite arc. I like the whole war between these two things and how far this went. But the most important thing I like the fact is the growth and development of Lucy understanding hey, we're not going to blame you for running away from home. You had your reasons for running away from home for some sort of reason. We're not going to get into that. But guess what? We're glad that you decided to choose a guild like Fairy Tail. Funny enough, I think Lucy in this arc even mentions she was actually pretty close to joining Phantom Lord as well, which I don't think would have been good for her. And stuff like that. But the thing is, I like the growth they give Lucy here by, making it to where now she can know she has trust with her guildmates of saying hey, these guys are here for me and they have my back. And I'm very appreciative of them for having my back. So I really do like that standpoint. It's gonna, but other than that, I enjoyed this arc. All the fights were pretty good in this arc, and but anyways, I'm gonna go first. So if you guys like the video, leave a like, put in the comment section your thoughts on this of the Phantom Lord arc, as well as hit the subscribe button to get more Fairy Tail arc reviews. So again, like I said, next time I will be talking the Tower of Heaven arc, where we focus on Urza's backstory against, I guess, where she essentially gets flushed back from the past and confronts her past and seeing her old friends in person, and including the person she seems to have feelings for. Well, we all know she has feelings for, and her, I guess you could say, her old best friend, Jalal. Other than that, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Until then, guys, I'll see you guys for that video in the coming days. Till then, guys, peace.